Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a right that's absolutely central to every workplace in the Philippines, but let's be honest, is often surrounded by a whole lot of confusion: the right to organize.
This is the big question, right? It's a fear that really gets to the core of this powerful protection in Philippine law. So to really get our answer, we've got to first understand what this right actually is.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We're going to start with the foundation, with what the law itself actually says. What does self-organization even mean? So you can see the language in the labor code is intentionally, huge. It doesn't say regular employees or factory workers. By saying all persons employed, the law is casting the widest possible net. And the goal is pretty simple: to give workers a collective voice that, they just wouldn't have on their own. And the law sees two really distinct purposes here. First, for folks with an employer, it's all about collective bargaining, coming together to negotiate for better pay, better conditions. But look at that second part: mutual aid. This is huge because it means even freelancers or gig workers can form associations for their own support and protection. So it's a right that really extends way beyond the traditional office or factory.
So here's a crucial point. This right isn't just about joining a group that's already there. It's really a three-part right. You have the freedom to form something new, the freedom to join something that already exists, and even the freedom to simply assist or support a union's activities even if you're not a full-fledged member.
All right, so we know what the right is. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of who exactly gets to use it, and maybe even more important, when they get to use it.
So, the general rule is basically almost everyone. This right covers pretty much every private sector you can think of, from farms to hospitals. It even specifically calls out security guards and, through what's called reciprocity, foreign workers, as long as their home country gives the same rights to Filipinos working there.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. You'd probably think this right only kicks in once you're a regular employee, after you've passed your probation. But the law is surprisingly clear on this. Day one. And I'm not exaggerating. It starts on your very first day of work. You are legally considered an employee for this purpose from the moment you start. Your probationary status, it doesn't matter one bit. Think about why that's so important. It means you have a voice in your working conditions from the minute you walk in the door, which totally busts that myth that you have to somehow earn your rights over time.
And hey, this isn't just some legal theory. The Supreme Court has confirmed this day one policy again and again. Their logic is pretty straightforward. Even new hires have a major interest in the working conditions and the union contract that will eventually cover them if they become regular.
But while the right is incredibly broad, it's not totally universal. The law puts up some really important firewalls, basically excluding specific groups of people from joining a regular rank-and-file union.
So, a simple way to remember the main groups who are out is the little acronym MCNI. This covers managers, certain confidential employees, non-employees, and those international workers we talked about without that reciprocal agreement. But honestly, it's those first two, managerial and confidential, where things get tricky.
And here we see a super critical legal line. The law draws a clear distinction between managers and supervisors. Managers, the ones who actually create and execute company policy, are seen as acting for the employer, so they're absolutely banned from joining any union. But supervisors are different. They might recommend things, but they don't set the final policy. So they can organize, but, and this is key, they have to form their own separate union, away from the rank-and-file staff they oversee.
Now, that term confidential employee is also really specific, and it's probably not what you think. It has nothing to do with trade secrets or sensitive company financials. This rule applies only to employees who are in on the company's labor relations strategy. Basically, the people who know how management is planning to deal with the union.
This slide is a perfect example. An HR assistant who's helping prepare for contract negotiations, they would be excluded because there's a clear conflict of interest. But a payroll clerk, yeah, they handle sensitive salary info, but they have zero role in labor policy. So they're considered rank and file and are free to join the union. Okay, so let's switch gears for a second because the rules change again when we look at the public sector. Government employees also have the right to organize, but it's a right that comes with some pretty serious limitations. And this right here is the biggest difference. It's the most important one. Government employees can form associations, and they can negotiate on things not already set by law. But they're absolutely 100% prohibited from striking.
The government's logic is that you just can't stop the delivery of essential public services.
And just like in the private sector, there's an exclusion list for government workers too. It mainly covers high-level policy-making folks and all uniformed personnel. So think military, police, firefighters, whose services are just seen as too critical to be disrupted.
So, wow, we've gone through a lot of rules, a lot of definitions, a lot of exceptions, but so what? Why does all this technical stuff actually matter on the ground in a real workplace? Well, it matters because all these rules create these incredibly high-stakes moments. And one of the most critical is something called the freedom period. This is the only time, just a 60-day window right before a union contract expires, when employees can legally challenge their current union or try to bring in a new one. It's basically the core of workplace democracy.
And the law protects this period fiercely. A lot of union contracts have a clause saying you have to be a member to keep your job. But the Supreme Court has ruled that that requirement is basically put on pause during the freedom period. This means you cannot be fired for supporting a different union during this 60-day window. It guarantees you can choose your representation without fear. So let's circle all the way back to our original question. Can you be fired for starting a union? Well, the technical legal answer is a hard no. That's called an unfair labor practice. But as we've seen, the reality is this whole complex tapestry of who's in, who's out, when you can act, and what you can do. It's this constant balancing act between broad empowerment and very specific limitations. And that leaves us with one final thought. Does this intricate legal framework ultimately make it easier for workers to have a voice, or do all the complexities themselves become a hurdle?